America, the land of the free and the fossil fuels. Big cars, big industry, bloated consumption.
Please help us.
But as the US burns and rivers bake, decades of addiction to oil and gas has turned the American dream
I didn't realize my house gone too.
into a living nightmare.
The oil and gas industry is king. They own most state politicians.
We know the direction that we need to go to quite literally save our planet.
Last week, this program revealed one of America's biggest oil companies trying to water down US climate action.
Did we aggressively fight against some of the science? Yes.
And showed their intent to rebrand gas as a clean fuel.
We think natural gas will play a key role in anything, and not just as a bridge fuel.
Tonight, Channel 4 News and Greenpeace UK's investigative unit reveal that ExxonMobil isn't just lobbying here on Capitol Hill, it's also central to efforts to pressurise the British government as president of this year's critical climate conference, COP26, to reposition gas as a vital part of the solution to tackling climate change, even though all the science tells us the opposite is true. When the world signed up to the historic Paris Accord, it was clear that not just oil and coal has to go, but gas has to be dramatically scaled back too. It emits less carbon dioxide than coal, but crucially, the methane it releases is 84 times more potent over a 20-year period.
A cry for survival comes from the planet itself, a cry that can't be any more desperate.
But come to Houston, Texas, the self-proclaimed energy capital of the world, and the rallying call is instead for oil and gas's survival. Freedom of information requests obtained by Greenpeace Unearth and shared exclusively with this programme reveal that it was in Houston last year that the UK government was being lobbied over its presidency of the upcoming Global Climate Summit. Over dinner, ExxonMobil, Shell, BP, Chevron and Equinor met with the then UK Trade Minister Conor Burns to press for the UK to be more lenient about the role of gas. In a summary of the meeting, the Houston consulate told officials in London, "These companies want to work with the UK, including during our leadership of COP26. But they need support from governments like ours so they can be seen as a vital part of the solution to future energy provision. So there needs to be a greater recognition of the role of gas in transition. It is cleaner than coal and is fundamental to the Texas economy." And finally, moving the US and the developing world from coal to gas was a necessary compromise, the memo concluded. We contacted the firms that attended the dinner. ExxonMobil told us oil and gas will continue to play a critical role in meeting the world's demand for energy, noting that many national and state governments recognise the contribution that natural gas can make. Shell said, "We make no apology for talking to policymakers and regulators around the world about climate change and how to tackle it. Business must be part of the solution." BP told us gas was an important part of our business and has a critical role to play in the transition to net zero, but that its strategy includes a fall in global oil and gas production and a tenfold rise in renewables by 2030. Equinor too said it was accelerating our own transition away from fossil energy sources to renewable ones. And Chevron added that its climate lobbying activities are designed to support our commitment to delivering affordable, reliable and ever cleaner energy. The Foreign Office in London said the dinner in Houston was a routine engagement focused on the importance of the transition to a clean energy future. We were not lobbied. But gas use is on the rise globally. It's big money and big business. So when cities across America try to take their own action, the tactics get even more brazen. The city of Santa Barbara in California is attempting a transition to renewables and is voting to ban gas for cooking and heating in all new builds. just as the UK has done, setting a deadline of 2025. We're driving around here in an electric vehicle.
Yes, we are. No carbon was burned in the making of this video, or at least a lot less carbon.
The response? Residents were bombarded with unsolicited emails and texts from a group linked to America's largest gas provider, Southern California Gas, or SoCal for short.
First text message said, you know, the city of Santa Barbara is trying to take gas out of your homes and it's going to destabilize the grid, and write to them right now to stop them. And I thought, that's very strange. Second text message, and it was signed this time, and it said, Californians for Balanced Energy Solutions. And I knew exactly who that was. That is the front group for SoCal Gas, the gas company in town.
So it's them masquerading as a kind of pro-consumer.
Yeah, like they're representing our interests while they spread lies.
SoCal has since admitted it was behind the pressure group and told this programme the most affordable, resilient and technologically proven deep decarbonisation pathways require clean fuels and a supporting gas grid to transport them. Nevertheless, SoCal's tactics worked. Megan Harmon is at the City Council pushing through the new regulations, and once SoCal's texts were sent to residents, it was inundated with complaints and objections.
It was as if a tidal wave had hit us. Just overnight, we got a huge number, maybe in the thousands, of emails. It was really about how expensive this was going to be for every resident and how their bills were going to go through the roof and that we wouldn't have power.
All of those things weren't true.
The research bears out that it's actually cheaper to construct new development according to this electrification rather than installing natural gas infrastructure. I think with something as important as climate change, something as fundamental to the future of our world, to give up is simply not an option.
So these are welding booths?
But that's a hard message to swallow for the millions of workers reliant on gas for their livelihoods, like this group of plumbers in Santa Barbara who feel they're being left behind.
It's devastating. I mean, it removes work for a lion's share of what our membership trains to do. This is simply an anti-petroleum movement, in my opinion.
Your president has made the point, talks about a just transition so that workers like you all here are not left behind by the move to renewables.
Oh, stop.
Well,
just transition, please. I was born at night, but not last night. Show me the funding for it.
President Biden's American Jobs Plan, if it passes this summer, aims to pump billions of dollars into renewable technology and help workers transition to new green jobs. But as the big freeze showed in Texas earlier this year, when temperatures plummeted and millions were left with no heating, officials were quick to blame renewables like wind turbines for freezing up, rather than the reality that the gas in the pipes froze and the state's electricity grid ground to a halt. So in places like Texas, it's clear renewables will remain a tough sell. Just look what happened when the city of Austin attempted to ban gas in new builds. The state government immediately stepped in and banned the ban.
So then they went to the state government. They asked them to ban cities from banning natural gas hookups.
How is it possible that they got away with that?
They get massive donations from the oil and gas industry. That's ultimately, it's their campaign contributions, and we're the capital of the oil and gas industry for the US. And they have so much money and power that it's going to be a long fight.
Right now, the gas industry is winning the war against climate action. And while it's true that efforts to ban gas are further down the road in Britain, that battle isn't won. Only in November will it become clear if the UK, as leader of COP26, has been led by the science or by the tried and tested methods of the industry to fight it. Doubt, delay and deflect.
Well, earlier I spoke to Congressman Ro Khanna, chair of the House Oversight Subcommittee for the Environment, who is asking oil industry executives to give evidence on their lobbying activities. And I began by asking for his reaction to Channel 4 News' investigation into ExxonMobil.
I was appalled. And let me commend you and the journalists on your team for exposing that. That was a bombshell report that has reverberated across the Capitol. These raised very serious issues. Is Exxon involved in an active climate disinformation campaign? Are they manipulating public policy to prevent climate change legislation? What is the role of fossil fuel executives on this? We will be holding a hearing. They will show up. They will have to answer, not just for that video, but more broadly to the American public.
When you say you're going to hold a hearing and they will show up, have you sent the letters inviting them?
We are sending them this week and early next week. We have been planning this hearing for over 3 months on climate disinformation, but we are prepared to use every tool in our toolbox to make sure they come. It is in their interest to show up. This is a very serious matter, and it will be the first time that these fossil fuel executives have to show up before a congressional committee and answer questions.
If they don't volunteer to come, then ultimately the power of Congress is to subpoena them, to require them to come. Have you begun those steps, or are you waiting to see what happens?
We expect them to voluntarily comply, but let me just say we're prepared to do whatever it takes to have them come in. They're not going to be able to evade Congress. Every other industry shows up. Wall Street shows up. The pharmaceuticals show up. The defense contractors show up. Tech executive CEOs show up. I don't see why fossil fuel executives should think that they're exempt.
Tonight, we're also revealing documents that show the extent to which the fossil fuel companies lobbied even the British government when it comes to the COP26 conference later on this year, with their argument that natural gas must continue to be, what they see as a transition towards a carbon zero future. They're still trying to sell gas as a clean fuel, even though it's obviously not.
Well, it's not, and it's not what President Biden has called for. We're going to have a clean energy standard that is going to be solar, wind, and electric vehicles. There is research money for things like fusion that could be a promising alternative. But again, this is further misinformation.
We've also revealed how their lobbying directly targets individuals to try and get them to change the policies in their local areas. To what extent is this an interference with democracy rather than just using democracy? I mean, we all have a right to free speech, but some people have more power than others.
Well, where it crosses the line is that they haven't disclosed where the funding is going. They haven't said what it's being used for. They are misrepresenting to their own shareholders and the American public their position on these issues. And they are engaged in behind-the-scenes lobbying as opposed to transparent lobbying. If they want to make a case transparently for their policies, that's their First Amendment right. But they can't use underhanded tactics, and they have to account for the misinformation.
Do you think this is a sea change moment, that governments and the world is now looking at all of this differently?
I do. I think your report was a historic moment, at least in Congress. I mean, we've been planning this hearing, as I said, for 3 months. We had some momentum, but after the video came out, the amount of calls I got from other members of Congress, the amount of interest it's generated has been enormous. And that's why I can say so definitively that we will get these fossil fuel executives in.
So just finally, I mean, your message to them, if they are considering not taking up your invitation at the moment, what do you say?
I say you don't want to underestimate the United States Congress. It is one of the most powerful bodies in human history. It speaks on behalf of the American public. Have some respect for the process.
Congressman, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.